got a little excited over there, didn't you? Let her cut loose on some of that bohemian stuff that she can play. You know, next thing you know, you got polka and people dancing all the time. Oh, me. I love it. I love it. We're in the book of Joshua, and we're just walking our way through the book. We have been talking about the children of Israel, they go into the promised land. And what we're going to be looking at this week and next week is this idea of we're going to start looking at how they conquered the land. And we're going to touch on this a little bit this morning, but there are actually three campaigns. There's what we call a central campaign, then there's a northern campaign and a southern campaign. And that becomes very significant, and we're going to dive into that a little bit this morning. But Joshua starts in the middle in conquering the land, and he basically starts in the center part, taking Jericho and Ai and that area. They set up camp in Gilgal. And this morning we're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 10. We're going to talk about the southern campaign where they go south. And then next week we're going to look at the northern campaign. So let me bring you up to speed so that we're all on the same page with it. Here is what had happened. They crossed there. They conquered Jericho. They camped at Gilgal. Gilgal is very significant. The children of Israel basically centered themselves at Gilgal, okay? And that becomes really their home base, if you will, for everything that they do. Basically, Gilgal sits in the center, and you have all of these ites that they've got to conquer, okay? And so we've talked about that. We talked last week about the Gibeonites who came down and made a pact with them and tricked them. They're going to come up again in our story today. So I'm going to show you a kind of an illustrated thing of what happens in chapter 10, all right? And then we're going to go to the text, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to wrap up some principles for us in there. So if you'll notice, this is the southern campaign, is kind of that circle part at the bottom. And then next week, the northern campaign where they head all the way up to the Sea of Galilee. Here's what today looks like if you were going to try to map it out, okay? It starts out this way, of course. They go across. They deal with Jericho. They make their way up. And then what happens is they come down, and 5 kings come up against them. We're going to talk about those guys this morning. Then they go up, they conquer another city and the king. Then they're going to go down, they're going to do another one. Then they're going to come back to the 5 kings. They're then going to go all the way down, and they're going to, Makkedah, they're going to actually take that. Then they're going to go out, and there's a whole bunch more cities that they're going to run and conquer. All of this happens in chapter 10. Okay? So it's a lot. It's a lot. So let's dive into some of it and see what we can learn. When you deal with the first 5 verses of Joshua chapter 10, there's an interesting city that comes up. It's the first time it's mentioned in the Old Testament, and that is the city of Jerusalem. So it's actually mentioned for the first time in Joshua chapter 10. What happens is the Gibeonites, who we talked about last week, remember they made that pact with Israel, kind of tricked them, thinking that they were from a distant land, and they weren't. All of their neighbor friend kings hear that Gibeon has made an agreement with the Israelites. So what they do is they basically get all together, these 5 kings, they get together and they say this is not good. We need to send a message lest everybody else start making a deal with Israel too. So they attack the Gibeonites. They attack their own people. The Gibeonites now say, hey, send word to Joshua that we're being attacked. I want you to think about this for a second. You're Joshua. Your people are upset with you because you and the leadership made a deal with the Gibeonites. Now the Canaanites are about ready to wipe out their own people, the Gibeonites. Problem solved. I just don't do anything. I just wait 4 or 5 days. Let the other Canaanites wipe out the Gibeonites. Everybody's happy. But Joshua doesn't do that. What Joshua does, he leaves immediately. They march to meet the 5 kings. The 5 kings and their armies are about 18 to 25 miles away. So think about the distance from here to Sioux City. Okay? So let's say we were the children of Israel. I'm Joshua. I hear the Gibeonites are in trouble in Sioux City. I say, let's go. And they leave immediately. And they march all night. Here's what's tricky. The area that they're going to is 4,000 feet higher than where they are. So now, not only are they marching at night, right away, but they're marching up 4,000 feet. As the children of Israel are doing this, they come over a hill, and all of a sudden, guess who's there? The enemy. Now, you've marched all night. What do? So they start fighting. And they fight. And they fight. They cover an area, when you look at it on a map, of almost 20 miles of area pursuing all of these people. In the process of that, God realizes that his people need help. So God sends stones, literally the text would say in Hebrew, stones from heaven. We would call them hailstones. They end up killing more of the enemy than the soldiers of the children of Israel. What happens now is Joshua, on the day that the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel. So now Joshua is pursuing these people. They've been up all night. They've been pursuing these people. Hailstones have been happening and everything else. And Joshua's going, I need a longer day. You ever felt like that? I just need a longer day. I need more hours in the day than I got stuff to get done. That's what Joshua's up against. They're pursuing the enemy and they can't kill them fast enough, and they need more days. So Joshua says, sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Elijah. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself on its enemy. As is written in the book of Joshua, this is a book outside of the Old Testament, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. That's a pretty bold prayer. It's kind of on the line. And so this was the prayer of Joshua, and the sun stops for a day. Now, there's all kinds of explanations. This just baffles scientists, okay? There's all kinds of, well, it was a meteor shower, it was like a big eclipse, it was a big this, it was a big that. God can stop the sun, no big deal. But I want you to stop and think about this for a minute if you're a Canaanite. Because if you're a Canaanite, you worship the sun god and the moon god. And your enemy has more power than your gods. His God is bigger than your God. And it says the people were afraid. The kings, they're a bunch of scaredy cats. So they gather together and they run. And they all hide in a cave. So you know what Joshua does? He said, put a bunch of rocks in front of it, seal the cave up. That's where they want to stay, we'll leave them in there. So Joshua seals up the cave with rocks. He goes about, and you saw that little chart, he goes up and conquers this nation, he comes down and conquers this nation, he goes down and conquers this nation, then he comes back to the cave. And when he does at the cave, he says, take the stones out. Well, these guys have been in there for a while now. So these 5 kings come out. And then here's what Joshua does. He makes them lay down on the ground. So the 5 kings now of all of these cities are now laying on the ground. He then starts calling over some of his leaders. And he says, I want you to put your foot on their neck. So you got the 5 kings laying there in front of Israel. You got his leadership has got their foot on their neck. And here's what he says. Joshua said to them, talking to Israel now, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to all the enemies you are going to fight. You all scared of these guys? This is what God's going to do with us. Joshua then put the kings to death. He exposed their bodies on 5 poles. This was a common thing. You would take the leader, you would kill them, you would put their body on a pole. Normally, the enemy would leave them on a pole until they finally rotted. But the Jewish law said they didn't need to be on a pole after sunset. So it says, and they were left hanging on the poles until evening. And at sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the poles. They threw them in the cave where they had been hiding. In the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day. And we're going to talk about this in a second, because I think this is the most amazing thing in this story. That day, Joshua took Makkedah and put the city and its king to the sword, totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. He did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. I think there's a lot of lessons in all of this. Then, basically, the last part of chapter 10, they go out and they start conquering all these other little cities. And it's just pretty much a straightforward thing. And then they took this city and they did this city. There's an interesting little deal in there, the city in the middle. They don't wipe everybody out, which is an interesting thing. They just kill the army. But Joshua chapter 10, read it for yourself, okay, as we go on. Let's talk about a couple of principles. I think there's 2 that really stand out when I look at this story that I think will kind of help us as we go through it. Here's the first one. Joshua's willing to ask some big things from God. How about us? Now, see, I think we ask big things from God, but here's our thing. I think we ask it for us. That's what you look at this story. There's nothing that said the sun was ever going to, nobody had ever asked the sun to stand still. But why does Joshua do it? Yeah, yes, he wants more time to defeat the enemies, no question about that. But you know what the bigger issue is? I want them to know our God is bigger than their God. And the text says that when this happens, they live in fear of the Israelites and their God. You see, the whole purpose of Joshua asking something big from God was not just so that Joshua had more time, but rather so that the nations that were against God would see God. And I think that's the big thing for us. There's no problem asking big things from God, but the reason I ask big things from God is so that the world will see my God, not me. And I think sometimes we forget that because, Joshua, again, he kind of puts it on the line as a leader. He does this in front of the whole nation. God, can you imagine me standing up and saying, God, I ask that the earth stop and that the sun stands still, and then we get 48 hours in this day. Amen. And then it happens? That's bold, folks. That's incredibly bold. But it tells me something about the faith of Joshua. And again, Joshua wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it because, again, and if you're a Canaanite God and you get up every day and you worship the sun god and you worship the sun god and you worship the sun god and you find out your enemy has more power over the sun than your sun god, whoa, that's a big deal. You know, I think sometimes we have to be careful because I think sometimes all we do is we ask big things of God for us. That's not what Joshua does here. And the whole point for Joshua is that they would see his God. Here's my question for us, and I think this is a question we need to realize and wrestle with. Are you going to live in such a way this week that people see your God? Or you? Because you see, I think our job, our goal is to point to Christ. So what I do this week and the way I treat people and the way I act, I want people to be able to see my God. I want them to see something bigger than me. And that's what Joshua does here. And people see his God, not necessarily just him as the conqueror. I think a second lesson that I see in this is this idea that Joshua is incredibly focused and strategic. He is the leadership of Joshua is a fascinating study in leadership. But one of the things that Joshua does here is there's a whole bunch of leadership principles. Let's start with the one that I see at the beginning. If you're going to conquer a nation, you got a great big area. Where do you start? Most leaders would do what? They would start here and work their way down, or they start here and work their way up. You know what Joshua does? He starts in the middle. You know why? Because he uses the enemy strategy against them. You see, this enemy strategy is to be united. That's what happened. The 5 kings come together and they figure, we have more power as a group than we do as an individual. We as a group will fight the Gideonites. We as a group will fight the children of Israel. But what does Joshua do? Joshua starts in the middle. You know why? He's splitting the country in half. Rather than allowing them to be united, he divides them. You want to know what Satan's going to do for us? He's going to do everything he can to divide us. You want to know what he's going to do in your family? He's going to do everything he can to divide your family. Whether it's husband and wife, whether it's parents, kids, he's going to do everything he can to put a wedge in the middle of it. Joshua realizes this strategy and decides that the best way to conquer Canaan is to start in the middle and split it in half. So it's strategic in what he does. The other thing is this. When the 5 kings come against the Gibeonites, the 5 kings are united. I personally don't think Joshua cared about the Gibeonites at all. I think Joshua saw this as an opportunity to be able to step aside and say, you know what? I'll let the Canaanites take care of my problem. They can wipe out the Gibeonites, then Israel will be happy with me again. But Joshua doesn't do that. The minute Joshua hears about the Gibeonites, and in fact, it's interesting. The language that the Gibeonites use is basically this. You have an obligation to help us. You have to help us because we made a covenant. The covenant didn't say anything about defending you. The covenant just said, we won't kill you. It didn't say the Canaanites couldn't kill you. This was an easy out for Joshua. But Joshua leaves immediately and marches all night. Why? Here's why. Because Joshua's goal was to take over that whole area. He had an opportunity where 5 of the city's kings and soldiers were all gathered in one place. And he looked at it and he's like, you know what? We can kill 5 birds with one stone. Let's go take it now. So Joshua is strategic in looking at it going, this is my opportunity. Let's go. Let's march against them right now. Our goal is to take over all of Canaan. Now we have a shot. 5 of the leaders are there. 5. In fact, he doesn't even allow it to get him distracted. The 5 kings run and hide, and you know what he does? Seal them up in a cave so we can go defeat more people. We'll deal with them when we get a chance. He then comes back to deal with them. Here's the thing that I think is so amazing in this story. When you read the text, here's the idea. Joshua brings out the kings, puts their foot on their neck, explains to Israel, this is what God's going to do to the enemies. He kills the guys. He puts them on a pole. He turns around and looks at Israel and says, hey, look, a little bit more time left in the day. Let's go down and take Makkedah. And the same day, they go down to take that king and that city and destroy it to come back. Why? He understands God has called me to a task, and I am going to do that which God has called me to do. And I'm going to do it with all the energy and all the strength and all the power I have. He is so focused on what God has called him to do. And I think that's the challenge for us. My concern for those of you who are young parents is this. You are not being strategic in the way you're raising your children. You are letting culture dictate it. You're looking around at what other parents are doing, and you're saying, you know what, that's what I need to do for my kids. One of the things that Satan's going to do is he's going to do everything he can to divide your family. I want to encourage you not to let him win that battle. You need to stop and ask yourself, Mom and Dad, how much time are you spending with your kids? Not with your kids' activities. There's a difference. How much time are you spending with your kids side by side with you? Because you need to be strategic, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to blink and it's going to be over. I'm in the process of, my wife and I, we set up some things that we wanted to do by the time we got to Social Security. And one of those things is we're kind of going through everything, realizing, okay, you know what, time is limited, money is limited, let's make some commitments to some different things. So we looked at our siding. Our siding's 25 years old. It was cheap when we put it up. It's done well, but it's had its day. Same thing with our windows. They were the best windows we could afford at the time. So we made a decision. We're going through our entire house. We're taking all the windows out and all new siding. And we figure it's a 2 to 3 year project because I'm not going to try to do it all at once. And so we've been working on it. Well, what's been happening is we've been working on it. I have been working on it, okay? My wife helps once in a while, but I learned a long time ago, I'm not going to treat her like a hired hand. She can't lift the stuff that I can lift and climb the stuff but back when we were doing it, it was a different ballgame. So what we would do is when we put the siding on, our kids always had to work side by side with us. Okay, so if I was out siding when 25 years ago, if I was out siding, my kids were out siding. They were picking up nails. There was always something they could do. We were always out there as a family. Well, what would happen is we get to the peak and we put the last piece of siding on, I would make everybody climb up on the scaffolding and sign their names. Okay? So as I'm pulling off this siding, I'm finding all of these times on when we did it. So, in fact, this past week, I was pulling some siding off this little peak thing, and everybody assigned it up there. It was 8/17/2001. Well, almost 25 years to the day, 24 years to the date. And so everybody's got their name on it. That you guys, I don't know, you would have been how old at that point? Yeah, 8 or 9. So I would make them climb up there and sign it and everything. And so we had just lost a dog, Tex, at the time. So Josh had wrote in there, "We love you, Tex." And so anyway, so I take a picture and send it to everybody. I'm like, hey, remember, one of them, we did it at like 10 o'clock at night is when we finished it. And it had to be JT. But he actually wrote the time up there so that you knew my dad is basically a slave driver working us until, But anyway, it was a reminder to me that, you know what? One of the reasons that we're tight as a family is because we did stuff like that as a family and worked side by side. And my wife and I were pretty strategic about that with our kids. We would sit down and we would look at our kids and we'd say, look, what is it that we're seeing in JT that we like? What is it that we'd like to see him do better? What is it in Josh? What is it? And we're doing that now with our grandkids. Because here's the bottom line. You know, I realized that this morning. 6 years from now, Claire's going to be driving. Scared now? Because I've seen her drive my lawnmower. Believe me, I got 6 years with a lot of work ahead of me. It'll go by like that. So I want to be strategic in the time that I have with my grandkids and my kids. Moms and dads, listen, don't let culture suck you into it where people are doing a lot of things for your kids and with your kids, but you're not part of it. Be strategic and invested. Those of you who are grandparents, be strategic in your investment in your grandkids. It becomes so important for us to realize this. Joshua is strategic in the way he approaches handling and dealing with the enemy. And make no mistake about it, Satan wants to blow your family up. And he doesn't care how he does it. So you're going to have to be on guard, and you're going to have to put things into place, and you're going to have to approach it in a way to be able to say, no. I want God to be a part of this thing, and this is the investment I'm going to make. And I just want to challenge you, because it's easy. It is so easy to let culture drive you. Talk to anybody who's over 60 right here, and here's what they will tell you. It goes by fast. So make it count while you can. Because everybody in here over 60 has things they do differently. The wise parent, the wise married couple, the wise individual here will go to those people and say, what would you change? What would you do different? And they'll put it into their lives. And it'll make a difference. And that's what I see in the life of Joshua. And so Joshua strategically, the minute he's done, he goes, this is what's going to happen. Now let's go take another city because we got a bunch of cities to get. Let's go get it. He just sit back and say, okay, that was a great day. You know, we killed 5 kings. He said, that was a great day. We killed 5 kings, but there's enough time to get one more. Let's go. Because he was so focused and he was so committed to what God had called him to do. And we have to do the same thing. So I end this morning with this. Joshua's willing to ask big things from God. And he was focused and committed to the task that God had called him to. We need to see this coming week as an opportunity to serve God and to allow people to see God in our lives. Let's pray. Lord, help us. Lord, Satan wants to do so many things to tear a family apart. God, he wants nothing more than to split a group of people who are committed to you. So Lord, help us to be wise, help us to be strategic, help us to be committed, help us to be willing to ask some big things from you so that we could be the people you have designed and intended for us to be. And when all of it is said and done, God, may people see you in our lives this week. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Let's stand together.